What's going on, guys? JT here from Precision Boxing. Now in this video I want to talk about fatigue and how there are different levels of fatigue and how that can get in the way of your boxing and your ultimate progress. Now there are 4 levels of fatigue that we're going to cover. The first one really not being that important. Number 1 is sensory fatigue. Number 2 is physical fatigue. Number 3 is mental fatigue. And number 4 is emotional fatigue, aka stress. Now sensory fatigue is not really a big deal in boxing. This is sort of the case of, let's say you're focusing on reading for a long time, or your eyes are focused on something for a while and they become blurry. Your senses literally are tired of doing that same exact task. And this is not really an issue for boxing. The next issue, which is what most of my videos are all about, and when you look at videos on YouTube or training manuals, this is what they're usually talking about, is physical fatigue. Now physical fatigue is very important, but I would actually say that your degree of physical fatigue in your training is usually symptomatic of mental and emotional fatigue. In other words, if you were to eliminate and deal with mental and emotional limitations, your physical levels would go up because you'd be more in the mood to train, you'd be able to focus harder, you'd be able to do more of what you need to do. So we're going to spend most of our time talking about mental and emotional fatigue. But briefly, let's talk about physical fatigue. It's what most of my videos are about. We're looking at enhanced endurance, stamina, we're looking at hand speed, power. If you get more on the biological level, it's ATP regeneration, lactate buildup removal, anything that is going to limit your ability to execute. Technical efficiency, technical integration, the way you put your hands and your head and your feet all together. So all these things play a role in physical fatigue. So first off, addressing physical fatigue, there are about 3 main ways that you can enhance your current level depending on where you are right now. Number 1 is however many days a week you are training, add more days a week. So if you are training 3 days a week, build it up to 4. If you're training 4 days a week, add a 5th day. This is one way to enhance your tolerance for fatigue or to build up your physical fitness and endurance. It's pretty straightforward. You don't have to do this consistently non-stop, but let's say you would go for a phase, like a cycle. So for 3 weeks, you would train 5 days a week instead of 4. Then for a week or 2, you could bring it back down to 4 or 3, and then you're going to go for another cycle again. So this way, you're not necessarily constantly going straight at it, but you've increased your level from what you're doing before. Now, another way to increase your physical stamina and limit fatigue physically, and similar to days a week, is to add more rounds per workout. And again, this is something that you would do in a cycle, and you don't have to do it for every workout of the week. You would look at your weekly rounds. So it's important to kind of know what you're training right now. And so let's say every workout you will add 1 round for the heavy bag, 1 round for your shadow boxing, maybe a round for other things that you're doing. Add a round in each segment for your workout for that day, and then do that for the week. Again, you wouldn't have to do this constantly. What you would do is maybe do this for a little cycle of 2 to 3 weeks. Then you can scale back to what you were doing before for a week or 2, and then you would go back to it again. And ideally what you would do is, over the months, is you would pick up your weekly rounds for a few weeks, drop back down, and then pick them up again, and they're going to be even higher than what they were at the first peak, drop back down, and then be even higher to what they were at the peak 2 and 3 back. So you cycle it upwards. Now when you're increasing these rounds, you might find it really hard to do physically, especially if you've been putting in a lot of effort into those rounds that you were training earlier. So what you want to do is, if you have a hard time adding these rounds, is you want high quality, easy rounds. The way to do this is that when you get to that bonus round, every combo you throw is going to be high quality. It's going to be fast, it's going to be hard, but there's going to be a lot of time between the combos, maybe even 10, 12 seconds between the combos. So you're not there to drill yourself into the ground with extra rounds of grind. You may put in all your grind rounds, and then you're going to get to these icing rounds. Literally, they're going to be sweet. They're going to be intense, but they're going to be sweet because there's going to be a lot of rest between. You want to have a fun time doing these additional rounds. So you would go, you throw your combo, bop, 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 quick and fast, feel good, and then move around 10, 12 seconds. Let yourself fully settle, relax yourself, and then boom, then you're going to throw some high quality combos again. So don't destroy yourself in these bonus rounds. Just add some nice sweet icing on top of the work that you're already doing. Third way to deal with physical fatigue, something that you probably already know, is to increase the intensity of your work. And again, you don't want to do this for all of the rounds that you're doing, but you're going to take the number of rounds, the number of days per week that you're doing, and you're going to take sections of them and you're going to ramp up the intensity. So let's say you're training 4 days a week, and let's say every workout in those 4 days is 16 rounds, and you're kind of going at a certain intensity. Take the Monday and take the Wednesday and maybe take 6 to 8 of those rounds and ramp up the intensity. So it doesn't have to be intensity all over the place, but by the end of the week, you will have put in more juice, more intensity for the same number of rounds. If you're already doing this, where you have these intense blocks, then you're going to try to go for another round or 2 more intense, or you're going to try to do that more days a week. And again, if you're already going at full intensity for a lot, then that's probably not what you need. You're going to go for volume with the easy, sweet rounds you're just going to put on top. But if you're working volume and you're working at a steady pace, then I would say you're going to take 1 or 2 workouts of your week and just take little blocks, 4 to 6 rounds in those blocks, and take the intensity up, 10, 15%. Put yourself really in that out of your comfort zone. All right, so we've talked about physical fatigue, which is not really a big deal. Let's get on to the next one, and that is mental fatigue. And this is a big deal. Mental fatigue is basically boredom. You either don't want to do this anymore, you're tired of doing this, or you really don't know what to do next, and so you don't do anything at all. You choose to say, okay, whatever, I'm going to pack it up for the day. Okay, so there are 3 ways you can combat mental fatigue. The first one is to have your workouts planned in advance. Means for every section, you already know what you're going to do. This is what you call a closed loop task. Means that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you know what's involved in a task. An open loop task is what we often do, where we're going to go into our workout and we're just going to go and go and go until we feel that we've had enough. For every workout, it doesn't have to be crazily structured, but for every workout, you're going to know how many rounds you're going to do. Just plan your week in advance. Once you plan it once, you can start working off of that template. And this is what I've done in my complete training plans program on my website, is giving you rounds, tell you what to do for every round, what's your focus, etc. But give yourself a structured workout, generally what you're going to do, so that you know what's involved in that workout, and so you know that the light is at the end of the tunnel. You can really crush it for that time. You don't want to leave anything in the tank. You are going to really work yourself through that time, as opposed to when you don't know when it's going to end, you might sort of hold back, put on the brakes a little bit, and then you get to this point where you say, I had enough, and then you kind of call it a day, and really you left juice in the tank, you left some money on the table. All right, the next 2 ways to combat mental fatigue, build your mental stamina. They are opposites, but you have to tackle this one first. And that is develop your tolerance for boredom. You have to develop a boredom tolerance. And this is very tough today, especially young people today. And you even hear when people are watching my videos, impatience, because with mobile devices and with access to information and with a lot of distractions, it's very easy to want to move on to the next thing. That it's hard for people to focus and to concentrate on one task, on one thing at a time. And so what you want to do is you want to develop that for yourself. You have to imagine that you're going to be a champion chess player and you got to stare at the board for hours and hours and hours and hours. The same thing with your boxing. You have to get comfortable, and you have to build up a mental tolerance, and this is something that you can practice. Your brain will develop for being bored as hell. Now, one way that I've done this, that I've built into my training programs, is that for all your segments of your training, shadow boxing, heavy bag, speed bag, whatever, you're going to work straight through, no breaks. Now, this isn't something you want to do all the time, because it takes away from the intensity of your boxing. It's also something I wouldn't recommend 2-3 weeks before a fight. So let's say you're taking the heavy bag. Normally you maybe do 6 rounds on the heavy bag. That's going to be 18 minutes of work, and that's going to be 5 minutes of downtime. So that's 23 minutes straight of work. So instead of taking the breaks, 23 minutes, take it up to 30 minutes. 30 minutes straight on the heavy bag. Of course, you're going to be scaling back the intensity because it's hard to maintain the intensity, but that's not what we're building here. We're building mental stamina, mental tolerance, so that when you go back to the intense work, your mind doesn't feel like quitting. Your mind is strong enough to stay on the task, to stay focused on the task. So it's one thing to tell yourself, oh, I'm going to stay focused on the task, but you want to practice focusing on the task. So take a week of your training, or take a couple workouts during the week for, let's say, a period of a month, and you're going to just train straight through. no breaks. Keep your mind focused on the task. And I can assure you that if you can go 30, 40 minutes straight on the heavy bag and 20, 30 minutes straight shadowboxing, focus, once you get back to 3-minute rounds with a 1-minute break, it's gonna seem like a party. All right, next thing to do. This is the opposite, and I would want you to do the mental stamina training first, the straight through rounds first. Once you've completed, let's say, a block of that, let's say a month, then what you want to do is you actually want to make your workouts more enjoyable and more engaging. But I wouldn't recommend doing this first. I would, do the mental stamina rounds before you get to this. That is, for every round, give yourself a new purpose, give yourself a new drill, give yourself a new objective. So let's say 1 round on the bag or in shadowboxing, you're working on head movement. 1 round or so you're working on footwork. 1 round you're working on counterpunching. 1 round you're going to focus on the jab but left hook. 1 round you're going to be digging to the body. 1 round you're going to be working shadowboxing. And if you're not sure how to go about this, again, I have it in my training plans guide, but I also have videos on this, and you can also just write it out yourself. 1 round you're going to imagine that you're sparring Muhammad Ali. 1 round, you're gonna imagine that you're sparring Lomachenko. So get your mind engaged. Every round is different. Every round is new. And you're gonna write these out in advance, or you could just jot notes on your phone. Just generally have a structure so that each round you do is different. You can engage your mind a little bit more, and that's going to keep your interest levels a little bit higher. And a bonus way that you can combat mental fatigue, and this is something that I used to do once a week, is just have a straight fun day or a fun workout, which means that all conventions of how you normally work out go to the wayside. So one thing that I used to do is I would go in to the gym. I wouldn't even skip rope. I don't want to skip rope. I would take a break from skipping rope in the beginning. I would start off on the speed bag, which is absolutely ridiculous. You almost never start off on the speed bag, but take the pressure off yourself. And again, this is something you're doing in between fights so that you can keep your skill level up and so you can enjoy your workouts. This is not something you're going to do 3 to 4 weeks out from a fight where you're really focusing and building up your intensity. This is to keep the interest level high so you keep your skill level between matches. So you can start off on the speed bag. What I used to do is start off on the speed bag 1 round, then I would go to the double M bag 1 round, then I would go to 1 heavy bag 1 round. We had a huge heavy bag. Then we had a headhunter bag another round. Then we had an uppercut or a body snatcher bag. I would go to that 1 round. And then I would go do some shadow boxing 1 round in front of the mirror. And then I would jump in the ring and do some footwork and shadow boxing in the ring. So if you have this, give yourself a nice little fun circuit. Maybe then you would do some conditioning. Break all the conventions and go round, take a break, round, jump around. And if you go through that circuit maybe 5, 6 times, well, hey, that's a lot of rounds that you've built in, and you've also added a lot of fun. So one way to really do this is, after you build up some tolerance and you want to get through these workouts, is to just give yourself a fun day where you get to play around. And then at the end, after you're done all that, you feel so good, then hey, skip rope for 15, 20 minutes and just have fun with it. Put on your favorite music and just go and groove and have fun with it. This way that your workouts are much more enjoyable. All right, emotional fatigue. Emotional fatigue, I'm going to rename as stress. And stress, there's all kinds of stress, and I would say that this is probably number 1. The number 1 factor that's limiting your performance, your potential, and your training. And I can say even from my own experience, emotional stress will stop you in your tracks. So let's tackle this emotional stress or stress from a number of angles. So the first thing that you would want to do is eliminate as much addictive stimulation as you can. And this could be caffeine, processed sugar, alcohol, cigarettes, drugs, porn, anything that is addictive stimulation. The thing about any kind of addictive stimulation is that the high is good. Of course, everybody's going to enjoy that. Let's say this is your normal default happiness level here, going along. This is how happy you'd normally, or how content you'd normally be. You're involved in some sort of addictive stimulation, whatever it is. It's going to take you up, and that's good. But eventually you're going to hit that point, and you're going to go below a level of happiness or contentment that you otherwise wouldn't be. If you hadn't indulged or engaged, you wouldn't necessarily hit this rock bottom point. You're going to get from the high, you're going to go to the low, lower than you normally would be. And once you're in this low, this is where all your bad decisions are going to take place. This is when you're going to do things that you normally wouldn't do. You're going to spend money you wouldn't spend. You're going to indulge in other activities that you wouldn't indulge in. You're going to reach out to people that you normally wouldn't reach out to. And it's also where you're going to shirk your responsibilities. It's when you're going to say, oh, I'm not feeling that great today. Forget the workout. Or you know what, I'll do the workout, let's skip the run. Or maybe I'll just go in and do a light, easy workout. It's when you're going to start negotiating with yourself because you're not feeling as well as you normally would be and you want to get back up to that point. And of course, any type of addictive stimulation creates a loop where you're going like this. And of course, I understand that there are social situations where it's called for. It's a party or an event. Yeah, then you got to have a good time and indulge. But in your daily life, eliminate it as much as you can. Your mind is really good, much better than you think, at dealing with the stress in your life without that stuff involved. You'd be surprised how tolerant you are for stress. And addictive stimulation, from my own experience and from things that I've read, it's not going to help you, especially with boxing, where it's going to take a lot of your mental faculties to bring out the best in yourself. So eliminate that as much as you can. Okay, a second one for stress, which may not seem so obvious, especially if you think of yourself as a tough person, a resilient person. The second one is guilt. Guilt affects all of us in so many different ways, but basically guilt is that you feel obligated to somebody or to something or to a situation. It's not really a responsibility, like let's say a certain family responsibility or a financial responsibility. It's below the level of a responsibility. It's maybe an old obligation that isn't suiting you anymore, or maybe you have new priorities. So for example, let's say you want to start training on a Friday night, but you always meet up with certain friends or do something else on a Friday night. You may feel obligated to do that and have a hard time making that change because you feel guilty. You feel guilty that you're going to let this person down. There's one book that I read that I really like, and I'm not promoting the book, just I really liked it, No More Mr. Nice Guy. And basically in that book, the author says that you are the ultimate judge of your own actions. And that can be very hard to internalize, to feel that, hey, I am the only one who has a right to judge my actions, because especially you're being judged by other people. And this book is not just for guys, it's for women as well. Guilt is going to get in the way of doing the things that you know you need to do, doing the things that you want to do for your training, and it's often affecting you before you even make the move because you feel an obligation to something that really is no longer a priority in your life. Now, I can't give you a one-size-fits-all solution for guilt, but usually what it means is that you have to build up the courage to have the conversation with that person or those people who you feel are getting in the way of the change that you want to make. You have to make the change and have the conversation, or have the conversation and make the change. But it really comes down to two things. One is courage, and number two is being able to weather the social storm. That there is going to be an implication. It's not like you're just going to go and say, hey, I'm going to start training every Thursday and Friday night. I know that we used to go and do this all the time. You're going to have to face a little bit of a backlash and see that through. But the good thing is that doing that is training for you as well, to be able to go and tolerate it, or to be able to get through it when you have to do that again in the future. So you're exercising your courage muscle, you're exercising your assertiveness muscle to be able to get what you need out of life without necessarily shirking responsibility, but rebalancing your priorities in a way that you know you need to do. Okay, next area on emotional stress and fatigue. Often what's going on is we are responding to a physical state, right? Same thing with the addictive stimulation. You know, it can go both ways. First you have a thought and then you get a negative feeling, and then also goes the other way. You get a negative feeling and then you have a thought. One way to keep yourself more even keel is to regulate your breathing, or practice regulating your breathing. One excellent resource that you can look up is online on YouTube, who has a number of great videos on this, is Mark Divine. Mark Divine, the former Navy SEAL. Check out some videos that he's got, and of course he's really just relaying knowledge that's come from practitioners for thousands of years. But he has a breathing method that I like called box breathing, where basically you're going to inhale for a set number of seconds, let's say 8 to 10 seconds. You're going to hold your breath for that same length of time, and you're going to exhale for that same length of time. And you don't have to do that for too long, maybe 8 to 10 sets of that. regular practice of that throughout the day, regulate your breathing, is going to lower your stress levels, your default stress levels. That reduced level of stress is going to give you the capacity and the ability to deal with things that are coming at you. And when you're better able to deal with those things coming at you, less energy is sapped and you have more energy for the gym, more energy to give your best performance. Okay, last area on emotional fatigue and dealing with stress. This is one that is a lot easier said than done, but in psychology they talk about a lot, and that is to have an attitude change or change your viewpoint on something. The hard part about this is that you may try to change your viewpoint about something and then only maybe 10 minutes later you're back to your old way. It's very hard to sustain a new viewpoint without new experience. It's very hard to just will out a new viewpoint. One example would be, let's say you don't like running. Or usually what happens is when you have a bad attitude about something, it's because you're no good at it, or you feel that you're no good at it. So relative to what's going on around you, your performance is crappy. So in school, you may hate math because you feel you're no good at math, or at work, you may hate working on Excel or something like that because you feel you're no good at it. So one way to have an attitude change is to decide that you are going to be the best in that area. That's one way you can combat that, is to actually start creating the action that will create the attitude change, as opposed to just saying, well, I'm going to have a new attitude, and then just stay at that subpar performance. So think about areas in your life and areas in your training where you have a weakness and a bad attitude that you know are getting in the way of your training, and take some time to decide that this is something that you're going to be really good at. This is something that you're going to excel at. This is something that you're going to put in 2 times the effort, or you're going to 10x the effort in this area, so that you can change your attitude. Another way you can say to change your attitude is you're going to raise your standard. Decide that, okay, I'm going to excel maybe in one area that I don't excel, but overall, I'm going to raise my standard. Now, all it takes is for you to raise it a little bit consistently for that to start to become the new way you think. You raise your standard, you feel better about yourself, you feel better about everything that you're doing. That carries over into your training. It's going to carry over into your performance. All right, so fatigue in sports is huge. We focus a lot on the physical. I would say that the physical is really symptomatic of the mental and emotional side that's going on in your life. You master the mental, emotional side in your life, the physical is going to take care of itself. Because for physical, you can watch 1,000 videos, they're going to tell you what to do, but really going out and doing it is the next level, and then doing it and sustaining it is even harder. So I hope this video helps. I hope you can put some of this into practice. Thanks for watching. Peace.